Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I had a good meal here myself, and just because you're single and by yourself does not mean you cannot have a very good Thanksgiving. I did get some pre-sliced turkey from a local restaurant here, and I also got my own cranberry stuffing that I made for myself, and also a pumpkin pie with some gold ready whip. But we're talking about political, no Thanksgiving meme fest on social media goes without any jokes about people of opposing political parties or beliefs sitting down at a Thanksgiving dinner and figuring out how they're going to deal with that. But what if I told you that there is a democratic territory within North America, no less, which has no political parties whatsoever? Welcome to the Canadian territory of Nunavut. I've been wanting to talk about this territory for quite some time, but this is a really interesting, fascinating part of that territory's governance, which is remarkably astounding. You see, Nunavut has a territorial legislature just like every other state or provincial subdivision in Canada does. But what makes Nunavut separate, unique from most of the others, other than the Northwest Territories, which also has the same feature, is that Nunavut does not elect its members of the legislature under any party banner. Everybody runs as independents. And so there are no organized territorial parties in Nunavut or the Northwest Territories. And this is what makes these territories unique to the rest of the Western Hemisphere. So Canada, as most everybody knows, has three federal political parties. The third one is very much on the downswing right now. The New Democrats are on the way out. They're going to, I believe, they're going to entirely disappear from the federal map the next election or two. They only have 7 seats out of the 343 seat federal legislature or parliament. But what makes Nunavut separate from the rest is that there are no party affiliations whatsoever. Again, everybody's elected as independents. And how the cabinet is formed is really, really interesting. Nunavut, all 17 members are elected without a party banner. It's basically called a nonpartisan election. And they all are elected independently. Now, in turn, those 17 members will sit there in Parliament in their first meeting, and they will elect the Premier. The Premier is the Canadian equivalent of a governor. And so it's basically a giant internal popularity contest, if you want to really get down to it. But the Premier is elected by each of the individual members of the provincial legislative or territorial legislative assembly. However, they also elect the members of the cabinet amongst themselves. So they all decide who's part of the cabinet amongst themselves. Then, the only thing that the Premier really gets to do with those individuals is assign the portfolios. Or, say that this person is going to be the cabinet member for natural resources, for example, or the cabinet member for transportation, or the minister of fishing and gaming, or he gets to sign out the portfolios. That's all this person gets to do, he or she or whoever it is. There's not been a female Premier of Nunavut yet, but he or she assigns the portfolios. And as I understand it, correct me on this if I'm wrong, but he or she also gets to break ties in the legislature when there's votes, because there are an odd number in 17. Now, Nunavut was created in 1998. It was carved out of the Northwest Territories, and so their form of nonpartisan government carried over with them. And the territory was officially created in 1998. The boundaries were drawn by the Land Claims Act of 1993. So the territory itself was drawn up several years before it became official. And the Territorial Assembly building is fairly unique. It's in the middle of the capital town of Iqaluit, and I say capital town because capital city would be a very loose definition of this capital, because Iqaluit has a population of less than 8,000, and the entire territory has a population of only about 38,000. But it covers an area larger than Great Britain, and it is a substantial landmass and is very important to Canadian sovereignty in the Arctic. And so these people, and Canadians of course have a Thanksgiving about a month before us Americans do. So their Thanksgiving arguments over politics happened about a month ago. But if they did in Nunavut, they don't happen really in Nunavut. Federal parties do exist in Nunavut, but they are not, in relation to the territorial government. They're only, because Nunavut does have one seat to the House of Commons, so they are a single electoral district. So they do elect one person to the federal parliament, and it is, of course, done by party. So there are parties in Nunavut, but they are only in relation to federal politics, and this one seat that they get. And they also get one member of the Senate, which is the upper house, which is generally not really a active legislative body. They basically provide unofficial royal assent in the Westminster system, but they do not really pass or vote up or down any legislation per se. So the House of the Senate in Canada is close to powerless. The House of Commons is where it's really at. But Nunavut does get one senator in addition to the one House of Commons member of Parliament. So the federal parties do have one representative from Nunavut under their federal party banner. Right now, I believe it's held by the New Democrats. It was previously held by the Conservatives, the Conservative Party, and the Nunavut Conservative Party member was pretty active in Canada's policy during COVID-19. Leona Agalak was her name. And she was pretty active in that particular policy, being the actual Minister of Health, so she was a cabinet member. But in the territorial government, party membership is irrelevant. Any political debates in Nunavut are not over the territorial government. They are only, Thanksgiving turkey dinner is not a political battle over parties within the Nunavut government. For those who even bother to celebrate, depends on what the native Inuit people do. And I believe that they largely do not celebrate Thanksgiving, so I don't think I believe this is a non-starter up there. But Nunavut is the most northern territory and has the most northerly populated settlements in the world. The most northerly permanently inhabited one is called Alert, which is a military base on an Ellesmere Island, which is the northernmost island, and it extends a very large amount of land, close to the size of Montana. And it covers a substantial amount of land. It contains the northernmost civilian settlement of any kind in the Western Hemisphere, and there's only one in the world north of it, and that is Grise Fiord. Grise Fiord has a population of about 140, and the story behind its founding is actually very tragic. Inuit people from down south were forcibly relocated by the Canadian government in 1953, relocated to this area to help establish Canadian sovereignty in the Arctic. They were told that there would be buildings and they were told that there would be food there, but there wasn't. There was nothing of any kind available to them. Luckily for these people, they did locate the whale migration routes in the Grise Fjord area, and they survived this way by hunting whales for food, for blubber, for insulation, and the blubber, of course, being the fuel, and the skins providing warmth for them and shelter, and of course the meat itself. So those people survived this way. But Grise Fjord also even elects its own member to the Nunavut Legislative Assembly, and so the Territorial House does have a member from Grise Fjord. And again, nonpartisan, not a member of any political party. It's one of the smaller territorial ridings or electoral districts in the world. Basically, Ellesmere Island as a whole elects one person to this territorial assembly, with only about 140 people electing this person. And so, again, the one or two territorial assemblies or legislative assemblies in North America that do not have a party affiliation, Nunavut and the territory from which it came, the Northwest Territories. Both elect their members the same way. Both elect their premiers and cabinet members in the same fashion. So Nunavut inherited that from the NWT when they became independent in 1998. So anyhow, that's it. The two places in the world where there are no arguments over politics, at least on a territorial basis, at Thanksgiving, Nunavut and the Northwest Territories. Hope you enjoyed this little chat. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you ate as well as I did. And I will say, have a good Friday, Black Friday. Don't kill each other out there shopping. Don't do anything stupid, drinking and driving. And again, Uber's in business and they're open tomorrow. They're open every day. And so, unfortunately, I don't get to join in on any of those festivities. I do have to work, but I do get to do it from home. So, enjoy your Friday tomorrow, everyone. Peace out, homies.